Just want to say, first of all, thank you very much for being with us on this Sunday evening. It's a little bit cold outside. Literally just had to run up the road where I am. I live out in the sticks. Unfortunately, I don't seem to get the best of internet connections. And I'm online tonight with a very good friend of mine and now hopefully a business partner, Hanif. Hanif, are you with me? Can you hear us?
I can hear you, Ash. How you all doing, everyone? Thank you for joining us today.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've got Hanif online. Now, the first thing that we do, we make sure that we've got everyone online. They can hear us all clearly and correctly. If you wouldn't mind, you've got a little control panel on the far right-hand side of your screen. Would you mind just putting in that you can hear us all nicely, loudly, and clearly, please? That's fantastic. Okay, so we've got Paul online. He's saying he can hear us. Tony, thanks for being with us. Okay, so we've got a lot of people online tonight. And the reason why you're probably online is because you're going to want to know a topic as to something that Hanif and I have been doing for a number of years, and it's how to acquire a property with no money down. So, okay. So let's get moving on. So we're going to keep the intros relatively short because tonight is all about content, content, content. So we're going to start moving on. So not too much about me, but tonight the main aim is to get you to understand and how to possess the skills into how to elegantly negotiate a win-win scenario, how to potentially purchase a property either via discount or with no money down. So a little bit about me. There's myself and my brother Arsh Ellahi. We run a group of property companies. We've been letting property since 1973, which technically isn't correct because I wasn't born until 1980. Now we've got well in excess of 500 tenants, majority of which are on benefits, which may scare a few of you. But when I say that we've got quite a sustainable business model, we've got a 100% rent collection record and a very high 98% occupancy rate. Okay, so moving on. So for those that don't know, have never met me, I'm on the left-hand side and my business partner, Aki, is on the right-hand side. So that's enough about me because what I want to do is get straight on to the point as to who is this person, Hanif Khan. Now, for those that know Hanif, you'll know that he is a very knowledgeable guy when it comes to property as well as business. For those that don't know Hanif, I'm going to hand it over to Hanif and he can tell you a little bit about who he is, what he does, but more importantly, why should he be here this evening talking to you about teaching you how to acquire property with no money down. So Hanif, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Okay, I'm just going to give you a really quick, brief introduction about me. Basically, I've been doing property full time since probably about the last 11 or 12 years. I own a number of estate agents. I've bought them, sold them, estate agencies themselves. I own letting agents and a deal sourcing company and a deal flipping company. So we buy properties, we sell properties, we do lease options over properties, and we've built our own portfolio. So we've done a bit of everything, everything from HMOs to normal family lets to houses to commercial property deals, anything and everything. And tonight I'm going to share a lot of the stuff of how we control property with no money down, how we can flip deals without ever having to actually buy them, but still make tens of thousands of pounds on the deal.
Okay, fantastic. So you said that you've taught many of the gurus that are teaching today. Is that correct, Hanif?
Yeah, I mean, I stopped teaching about 5 years ago, I reckon. It's 4 or 5 years now. But before that, we were the first guys to sort of teach a lot of these techniques around lease options and how to buy property without, with no money down. How do you control it? How do you create the ability to buy a £200,000 property just with a piece of paper and without actually having to complete on that property? So we taught a lot of those techniques. I've taught for Progressive, I've taught for Simon Zushi, I've taught with Palmdeep Videshia, pretty much everyone. I've taught most of their advanced courses, and we mentored and personally have taught at least 200 people on a mentorship that we ran over 3 years, which was at the time the most successful property mentorship around. I stopped doing it because I get agitated and I like to do different things. So we started doing some businesses and building businesses that turn over millions of pounds. We did that and are still doing those for the last few years, as well as property.
Okay, so what are you doing now, Hanif? Because I've put in some of the marketing material that's gone out that you're actually doing a fair bit with a large company called B&Q.
Yes. So with B&Q, what we do is basically we're their innovation partner. So we look, if you've got a new idea or some inventors come up with a new product, we will then get that new product, we'll work out how to manufacture it, we'll get it patented, we'll put it into the market and get it onto the shelves in B&Q, in Screwfix, in the Home Depot in the States, Bunnings in Australia, Castorama in France. So all the big box retailers. We mainly deal with hardware products, and anything that's new and innovative. That's our niche, and that's what we do. And that business turns over millions.
Fantastic. Okay, so you can see, guys, that I've managed to pull on board tonight someone that you won't hear this content anywhere else. But more importantly, who better to hear it from than the pioneer of the strategy? Now, we're gonna be giving you a lot of information tonight. So you're gonna be asking, why are we telling you all this? Why are we giving away our golden nuggets as to how you can acquire property for free or with no money down? And the reason why we say this is because the strategy that we're going to be showing or even portraying tonight is we're determined to show you how you can easily build a property portfolio with limited cash reserves, which can easily cash flow handsomely within the next 3 to 6 months. And in actual fact, we did a webinar last Sunday. There's no secret about that. Both Hanif and I did a webinar last Sunday. It's completely different to the one that you're seeing tonight. But the question is, what have we done within the week? Now, I was speaking to Hanif very briefly before we got onto the webinar, and I was saying, well, how have you gone on this week? What have you done? And he's told me about a fantastic deal that he's actually working on. And in actual fact, both Hanif and I are both working on another deal jointly. I'm going to be talking to you about small portfolio. So technically speaking, this week I have sourced 36, yes, you've heard me, 36 properties which have cost me nothing to acquire, all on lease options. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, lease options. So you've got to ask yourself, and more important, it's cost me nothing to acquire those. Now, some people may not acquire 36 properties in their whole lifetime, but in actual fact, I've done it within a week. So we'll be talking about that in a short while. But before we go on to that, I want to know who we've got online, but more importantly, what's your why? Why are you here tonight? More importantly, do you have any knowledge on lease options? What's your property experience? What do you see as being your long-term goal? If you wouldn't mind, just in that column on your screen, tell us a little bit about yourself so that we know what we need to say to you, where we need to guide you this evening. So if you're a complete beginner, don't be afraid to say it, because that means that we can start from the absolute bare basics and then show you exactly what you need to do to go out and implement this strategy tomorrow. Okay, so someone's put complete beginner and here to learn. That's no problem, Mike. Thanks for being so open and honest with you. Okay, so here's an interesting one, Hanif. We've got a young gentleman on the line called Lee, and he goes, "I'm a builder, not got a lot of money, but show me how." Okay. Now, builders are fantastic. No experienced beginner, could I do this? I want to earn enough so I can buy myself a nice place to live. Some people got some properties. Some people got some flats. Some people got very little deposit. Some people got quite a few buy-to-lets. Okay, the reason some people want to build a 2 million plus portfolio. Okay, so the main aim about tonight is that people are saying that they don't tend to have a lot of money in cash reserves. And if that's the case, you are definitely on the right webinar. Because tonight, the whole point of tonight's webinar is showing you how to acquire property for nothing, for no money down. Okay, so keep just quickly going through. Right. So everyone wants to know how to acquire property no money down. Now, I've put this slide up just very briefly because this is what everyone's ideal perception is of financial freedom. They want to spend more time with their family. They want to be out on that golf course playing golf, all year round, and they want to be on that road to financial freedom. Everyone talks about financial freedom, but what is financial freedom? Now, to some people, financial freedom is the thought of owning hundreds of properties with a mortgage, the traditional way. They've bought it, they've put down a 75%, they've got a 75% buy to let product, and they've put down a 25% deposit. Now, to me, that's not financial freedom. And I'm sure Hanif would agree with me on this, purely because when you acquire a property and you've gone through that process of 25% deposit, it can be very slow, can be very lonely, especially if you're doing it by yourself. And it all depends on how much cash reserves you got, how much profit the property makes, which will enable you to decide when you buy the next property. But more importantly, what I don't like about the whole buy-to-let product is that you've still got this ball and chain around your neck. Yes, it may allow you to leave your job, but have you just traded that job for another job? Are you then at the mercy of your tenants? Are you then at the mercy of your letting agents who are managing your property for you? It may be giving you cash flow, but then have you got a ball and chain around your neck for the next 25 years? Owned to the bank? Are you owned by a bank? Are you only financially free really when you sell that property? Now, I'm very much of the mindset now. Yes, I still buy property. Yes, I still leverage on property, but I'm in a good position where I can afford to do so. Where I've got very low gearing against, while my portfolio is very lowly geared. But more importantly, I've decided that any property that I take on now, I want to acquire for nothing. And tonight we're going to show you that. And I just want to kind of get the point across is that there's nothing wrong with lending money from banks. But if you can acquire something for free, why would you go to the bank? Why would you commit yourself to a 25-year deal? How about if you go to an owner and you go to them with a completely new concept and say, tell you what, why don't you give me the property for free? We'll do some form of strategy. And along the way, we're both going to make money. Does that sound good? And if just so that I know that we've got everyone on board, I want to make sure that we've got the right kind of people on board tonight. Does that sound good? Because if it's not, you're on the wrong webinar. I want positive-minded people on this webinar. I want you to completely sit here with a completely open mind, because everything we're going to be talking to you about tonight is completely legal, completely open, and it's completely open, and there's nothing to be afraid of. So someone says that sounds scary for landlords. It is, well, technically speaking, it's not scary for landlords because everything to do with property is associated around risk. Now, there's good risk and there's bad risk. Now, providing that you can calculate your risk, that's good risk. For those that can't calculate it, I'd say that's bad risk. So let's keep moving forward. So I'm going to pass this over to Hanif now. So Hanif's going to tell you, for those that are completely new to property, and there's no shame in that. Hanif, if you wouldn't mind telling us, what is a lease option?
Okay. A lease option really is just exactly what it says. It's those two words, a lease and an option. So if we just break those two things down into the two separate bits. So the first word is obviously a lease. So what's a lease? A lease is a right to rent a property. So you could for example, have a lease for to rent a shop, to rent a house, anything you like, but for the next 10 years at 15,000 per annum. So that gives you the right to rent that property so long as you pay £15,000 every year. Your tenants, in fact, lease your houses from you. We just call them short hold tenancies instead of leases, but ultimately they're renting your property from you, so they have a right to rent your property. So the lease is just basically a right to rent a property. And then the second part is the option. And the option is a right to buy a property ultimately. So it gives you the right to buy a property. Normally an option has a length, so maybe you've got the right to buy this property for the next 10 years, a price that you're allowed to buy it at. That price might be 200,000, for example. And really that's the essence of a lease option. So it's a right to rent a property and the right to also buy that property at any time over the next 10 years, or not buy it if you decide not to. And that's the beauty of lease options. It's that ability to not have to buy it if you don't want it, but you can if you want to. So you're completely in control of this property. If prices go up massively, you buy it. If prices don't go up, or if that property is not what you're looking for, it doesn't fit into your portfolio, you don't buy it. And that's, we use it a lot for some of our long-term portfolio holds, but also for a lot of flipping property, because it gives us the right to buy a property at, say, 100,000, and if we can then flip that property out for 130, why wouldn't we? And it's easy to do, and it's we'll come onto some strategies a bit later on the seminar and how we've used it, and we can go into more detail, and maybe I'll talk to one that I'm doing this week that we're doing at the moment, where we're looking at a profit of just under £1 million.
Wow. So guys, so here's our first question. Someone's put, is there a limit on how many you can buy? Now, that's a great question, because with lease options, because you're not putting any money down, there's no limit. The question is, how many can you handle? So, okay, so Hanif has just mentioned there that there's a property that he doesn't own yet, but there's a potential profit of £1 million. And it's correct me if I'm wrong, Hanif. How much is it costing you to get into the deal?
Nothing.
Fantastic.
I mean, there may be a little bit of a couple of thousand when we do the contracts for the lease options, but at the moment it's costing us nothing. The property is currently worth 860 odd thousand. The person's just bought it, but we're doing it changing into a development with a GDV, a gross development value of about 3.4 million, 3.2 million.
Okay, what's the exit strategy there then, Hanif? Whilst we've got you here now, we might as well talk about this deal.
Okay, I mean, in essence, we're converting it into 17 apartments and 4 retail units. It's in a city centre location, so great lets, easy to rent out, easy to let out, easy to sell, and we're basically going to flip out the residential accommodation, sell it all off, and keep the commercial properties and put them on long-term leases to people like Costco and so on.
Okay, fantastic. And so you said that you reckon the existing value is around 860. You've done an option with the owner where
they've just completed on it for 860.
Yeah.
So they've just bought it for 860. We've then getting an option over the property at the 860. We are then getting the development costs together and then sharing on the profits on the back end. So in reality, we're setting up that deal, and for setting up the deal, we're going to end up with probably around 40%. We haven't negotiated the final figure, but about 40% of that profit is what we're aiming to try and do.
Okay, fantastic. Right. Okay. So we'll talk about some of the benefits of a lease option. So when we talk about flexibility, how flexible is a lease option, Hanif?
Well, this is the beauty of lease options. Again, and options in general, you can flex them to do anything you want. That's why I love them. That's why we use them so much. So you can buy commercial property with it. You can buy residential property. You can buy land. You can buy anything you want using lease options and options in general. And you can buy them. You can do them as short term, so you could hold the property for a few months, or you can hold the property for 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years if you want. And either way, that's their flexibility. They do just about anything and everything you can imagine, you can think of. You can do it with them.
Okay. So now here if I now what I would suggest is that in order to create a successful lease option, you've got to create something called a win-win solution. Now, if we analyze the diagram that we've got here tonight, we're going to see that the best way of creating a win-win solution is if it's good for both parties, which if we look at the top right-hand box here, has to be good for both parties. If you're going in it with a view of a one-way mindset, it's got to be good for me. I don't care what happens with the vendor, or I don't care what happens with the investor. It's never going to work. It's never going to work because at some point it's going to fall over, and if it falls over, it's going to fall over badly. So it's got to work on a win-win solution for both parties. But more importantly, I'm going to pass you over to Hanif now, because lease options allow multiple solutions for the same problem. Would you agree, Hanif?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you sort of talked about creating these win-win situations, and the one thing about lease options is they give you that flexibility. So if the vendor wants money now, you can give it. You can create a solution that allows them to do that. If the vendor wants money in 20 years' time and doesn't want you to do anything with the property now, then you can do that. If the vendor's looking for a rental income in reality from you, a monthly amount of income every month, you can do that. If they're looking for no monthly income, but in 15 years' time they want a lump sum, you can do that. If they're looking for completion on a specific date, maybe in 3 years' time, you can do that. And that's the whole thing. You can give them what they want while still making money for yourself. And that's the beauty of that. That gives you that extra advantage over all the other investors out there, in that you can give the owner or the vendor exactly what they want and still make money.
Okay, so Tony's coming with a question straight away. And I thought this quite relevant now. He goes, if you want to buy the property, do you agree to purchase at the current price or the future price?
Okay, good question. It depends. We generally agree to purchase at today's prices or below today's prices. However, saying that, we have in certain circumstances agreed to purchase for a few £1,000s more than today's price, but only where we've got 20 years to buy it at that price, or 17 years at least to buy it at that price. So, if prices don't go up by a few £1,000s in the next 17, 20 years, I'd be very disappointed, and we're in the wrong game, really. We're in this game because we believe property is going up in value.
But Hanif, we've knocked the nail on the head earlier when we said that a lease option, we have the option to purchase, but not the obligation to purchase.
Correct.
So technically speaking, if they don't go up and it looks like that we're not going to be making money, we can literally just walk away. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. If you wanted to, you could absolutely do that as well. That's the whole point with a lease option. You've got the option to buy it or not.
Okay, fantastic. So, so where's the benefits? So let's have a quick look at the benefits. I don't want to spend too much on this because I want to get to some real life examples that both Hanif and I have done, and more important is some of the case studies that we've actually looked at this week, which is still hot on the press. So for the benefit for a lease option, from the vendor's point of view, let's look at the owner, because we need to, every owner has got an itch. It's up to us to scratch it. I hope that makes sense anyway. So first of all, we need to help them solve a problem. Their problem could be that they need money. Their problem could be that they've had enough, or they don't want the hassle of managing property. Their problem could be that they haven't got sufficient funds to do up a property, which means that the property may be uninhabitable. Or the the other obligation may be that they just want a monthly income. Now, from our point of view, we can control all that, and we can provide a solution for all that. But the benefits for us is that it allows us to control a property without actually owning it, without putting down the 25% deposit, without dealing with mortgage surveyors, without dealing with mortgage companies. It allows us potentially, if we wanted to control it, add value, and then flip it, sell it, or rent it. You decide what you want to do with the property. What you need to decide is the timescale in between. Is it 1 month? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 20 years, like Hanif said? More importantly, what's going to happen within 20 years? I'm hoping that within 20 years, property prices would do somewhat, okay, at some point we might have a bit of a downturn, but then on the upscale of it, because it's the obligation to purchase within that time, or it's the option to purchase within that time. So if you see prices rising, you can exit any time within that 20 years. Doesn't mean that you have to wait until the 20th year to exercise it. More importantly, everyone knows of a strategy called rent to rent. It's where you rent a property off a landlord. You may have to you run it on a management contract, and then you rent it out by room, creating a HMO. This is the next level up, because it's great doing a rent to rent, but why wouldn't you put an option to purchase and giving you the first option to purchase that property? You've done the hard work. You've already created the multi-let, which means that you've already added value, which means that technically the property should be worth more money. Why wouldn't you put the option to purchase in there, which gives you that advantage of generating further income from that property? And the last one is the option to purchase, which we've just spoken about. Is there anything you want to add to that, Hanif?
No, I think you've covered it pretty well. I mean, the reason you use options is it allows you to do all of those different kind of deals. Could be deals where you're fixing up a property and putting it back onto the market, or and you can use an option so you don't actually have to buy the property whilst you're fixing it up. Yet you can still make tens of thousands when you sell it for that much higher value that now that it's a decent property. So, for example, we've done this where we bought a property. It doesn't have a kitchen in. If you don't have a kitchen in a property, it's unmortgageable because the house is not ready to rent out. So we've gone in, we've taken an option over the property, we've then put a kitchen in, resold that property with the kitchen. It's now mortgageable, so it's worth more money, and it's been sold to a buy-to-let investor. So it's great for the simple things like that, all the way up to much more complicated land deals or anything else you might be doing.
Fantastic. So, guys, you see how this can really allow you to take control of a property, add value to it, and then allow you to exit it, making money on it. And Hanif's just giving you one example there of taking a property that's unmortgageable, get it up to standard, get it up to purchasable level, and then sell it off. Now, people always talk about using lease options and why you should use a pound. Now, can you just very briefly, Hanif, just go into why do we need to put a pound down?
Okay, I mean, it doesn't have to be a pound. It could be a penny. It could be 10 pence. There should be some exchange between you and the person that you're writing a contract with. So in order for them to give you the right to buy this property for the next 20 years, you should give them something in return. So you can give them a penny, you can give them a pound, and it's just one of those things that have stuck into people's minds. Oh, you can buy a house for a pound. But in reality, what you're getting is you're getting an option to buy the house for a pound or for a penny or even a peppercorn. If you really wanted to, you can write that in the contract.
Okay, so it's a consideration, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a consideration for the option that they've given you.
Okay, so that's just getting around. A lot of people ask, well, why do we need to put the pound in? Why do we need to put the pound in? But that's just telling you a little bit. It doesn't have to be a pound. As Hanif said, it could be a peppercorn, it could be a penny, it could be 10 pence. You decide what you want, but there's got to be some form of exchange. Okay, so moving on. I want to get onto the examples. So I'm going to quickly go through this. We've talked about quite a few of these already previously. So people always ask the question, is it legal? How can you do this? But the fact is, it is legal if it's done correctly. And when we say correctly, we're talking about making sure that you've got the correct legal team on board who understand lease options and understand the lease option contract paperwork in order for it to be submitted and enforced correctly. Now, you may you may be surprised to hear that. In actual fact, councils also do it. So you've got to ask yourself, if they're doing it, it must be legal, right? Because they can't afford to put their neck on the line. We're going to have some people on the line who are questioning this. And, with all due respect, that's natural. Because people are thinking, well, this sounds too good to be true. Why would someone agree to sell their house for £1? Now, we've already talked about quite a few of these. Now, first thing could be, and we'll give you an example in a minute, is that they may be in negative equity today. Which means that let's just give you an example, the house is worth £100,000, but they bought it back prior to the crash, where they remortgaged up to the hilt. Back then, it probably would have been worth 130, which means that they've probably taken a mortgage for over £100,000. And let's just use an example of 105,000. So the house today is worth 100 grand. They've got a mortgage of 105,000. If they sell it through a traditional estate agents, yes, they're going to potentially achieve the 100 grand, but they're still short 5 grand. Plus, they've got to stump up for their legal fees. Plus, they've got to stump up for some estate agents' fees. So, in actual fact, it may cost them the best part of 10 grand to leave their property. Now, you've got to ask yourself, well, if it's costing me money to sell the property, why would I do it? But more importantly, if someone like Hanif came to you and said, in actual fact, there's a solution for this. How about if I agree to buy it off you, we do a lease option on it. So I lease it off you with the option to purchase it. And let's just say that I agree to purchase it off you in 20 years' time. Not only will I be able to clear your mortgage, but how about if I give you a little bit more as well? So in actual fact, we pay more than the market value today. So instead of paying him 105 grand, how about if we give him 110 grand, which means that he's getting his 105 grand, plus all these legal fees, plus a little bit which will allow him to go off and do, well, he's not going to be able to go off and do anything with it immediately, but more importantly, it just means that he's not in negative equity. Have we created a solution to his problem? Of course we have. And then the other points that we've put down there is that what if properties need work? Hanif gave you the example of properties that are unmortgageable because it may not have a kitchen, it may not have a bathroom, it may have been stripped of its copper, it may have been stripped of its heating, depending on the location. Now, the only real exit points are to sell to a cash investor or through an open market or through an auction. Now, are they going to achieve the kind of figures that they want to achieve, or could someone like Hanif come in again and step in and say, well, I can offer you this, but in the meanwhile, you can derive an income from it? Again, you're always adding value to the property, and there's a potential, like Hanif has mentioned with his land acquisition that he's doing this week, there's a potential JV that you can do with the owner. Yes, okay, your land is worth 860 grand today. You bought it for 860 grand. Now, if you allow me to go off and run the planning on it and get 14 apartments plus some commercial units, it may be worth 3.6 million. Now, if you allow me to go off and get the planning, how about we do a profit split? Now, just imagine that you're the landowner that has just completed on this property. If someone's saying to you that you bought it for 860, but in actual fact, I can probably give you the best part of $1 million or something like that for it, but it's going to take a short while for me to do. How would you feel? Someone's giving you money, more money than it's worth, and you're not having to do anything for it. More importantly, guys, you can do this. So just something to think about there. So reasons why. Right, I'm going to pass you back over to Hanif for this. Why do we pay more than market value? I think we've touched a bit on it just previously, but Hanif, why do we pay more than market value for the property?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, one of the reasons is obviously, you know, if you're paying 110,000, but you're not paying that for the next 15 years or 20 years, hopefully that property is going to be worth 300,000 then. So why do you care if you're paying only 110,000? You've got it at a massive discount. So, you know, those sort of long-term negative equity type acquisition deals are worth it, and you're quite happy doing them. But one of the reasons we do it is for cash flow. So if you've got a house and the current mortgage is £100 a month, but you can rent it out for 700 or something, you're making 600 every month. So you don't mind agreeing a option to say you'll buy this property at 120, because you know in the meantime you're still going to be getting £600. And if you never ever exercise that option, which means you never actually buy the property, so what? You've got 600 quid or 300 quid, whatever the extra money was every month for the next X number of years until you decided you didn't want to do that. So cash flow is one of the real good reasons that we do it, and we do lots of those kind of deals. The second reason is, again, going back to this negative equity thing, is because it's about holding property long term, you know, for the capital appreciation. So if I was, you know, anyone who's bought a house goes back and thinks, if you bought that house 15 years ago, you know, I was buying houses in Birmingham for £30,000 when I first started doing this, and now they're 120,000, those same houses. If somebody told me I could have had an option to buy that £30,000 house for 50,000, I would have signed hundreds of them quite happily, because what are they worth today? They're worth at least 120,000. So who cares if you pay more? So that's not exactly what we go and tell you to go out and do, and that's not what we're going to show you. But there are certain circumstances and certain times when you can use that strategy, and it does work. So, and the last thing is, if you're thinking of adding value to a property, again, so if you think that currently the property is worth 100,000, but if you were to go in and, for example, put in this bathroom or this kitchen, suddenly the property's value goes up to 150,000 because now it's mortgageable. Again, you might have agreed to buy it at 110,000, even though the market value without a kitchen is only 100,000, because you know you can sell it for 140,000. What we tend to use that for are leases. So when somebody's got a short-term lease left on an apartment or a flat, the flat becomes very low in value. So we'll go in and, you know, buy the apartment, get a lease extension on it once we've got our option in place. So that gives us, you know, another 99-year lease from the freeholder of the apartment block. Once we've done that, we then put it back onto the market, and we're able to sell the property without ever having bought it, but just because we had an option on it. And the new person who's buying it then has a long-term lease, and therefore they're able to get a mortgage. So a very simple strategy that just because you know it exists and you can do it, it works. Whereas the owners themselves, they don't know how to do it. They're complicated. They don't know that they don't have to pay, you know, £20,000 to get the lease extension. You can actually get the new buyer to pay the £20,000, and that's basically how we structure those deals. So, you know, there's many times when you pay more, but generally you pay less, and that's what we generally tend to do in most deals.
So what we'll do, we'll go straight into, hopefully go straight into some examples now. So these are deals that actually Hanif has done. So would you mind just quickly going through these?
Yeah, I mean, I've simplified the numbers just to make it, you know, make it easy on us at the moment. So this is an example of when you would buy a property at a below market value, or even at more than the market value. So we talked about this already, so we're repeating ourselves. But if you bought a house in 1980, for example, for £30,000, and today that house was worth 100,000, would you care if you paid 40,000 for it? Absolutely not. And that's the beauty of an option. So if you had an option to buy that house today for 40,000, even though it's worth 100,000, but you'd written that option in 1980, so what if you wrote that option in 1980? Because today that property is worth 100,000. really what that slide's all about.
Right. Okay. So keep moving forward. Then is that all we've done is we've controlled the property and probably simply rented it out. And what we've done is that we haven't had to worry about any mortgages, or we're not even concerned about the mortgages. All we're concerned about at the moment in the interim is the rental income, but more importantly, the capital appreciation. So we're going to talk about this week, and then we're going to go into a few more examples. So this week, both Hanif and I, we had a quite in-depth conversation because I was approached by an investor who has got a small portfolio of 6 properties, which are in negative equity and are just about breaking even. Now, just for the people on the webinar, I'm going to show you where they are in a second as well. We've got to ask the question, well, where's the benefit for us? Why would we do it? Now, if you have a quick look at the screen grab that I've got here, so by all means, I can show you here that the first property, current value 90 grand, balance on loan, so he's got a mortgage for more than what it's worth, as well as the second property has got a larger mortgage than what it's worth. You've got to ask yourself the question, would you do this? But more importantly, how can you add value so that you've got to think of 2 things here. You've got to think of short term and you've got to think of long term. My short term thinking is, how can I add value to these properties, which will allow me to generate cash flow? And my long term objective is, okay, it's worth 90 grand today, and there's a balance on the loan of 91 on the first property. But in 20 years' time, what's that property going to be worth? Is it going to be worth more than 91 grand? Now, Hanif, what was your thoughts when I sent you this spreadsheet earlier this week?
Well, I straight away looked to see which properties I could do 2 things. One was increase the current rent by maybe splitting it into some sort of HMO or reletting it in a different way. And secondly, I look for which properties would fit my portfolio in terms of geographical location. So we tend to look for our long-term portfolio to be either in London or Birmingham, and that's where we're building it out. We do have properties outside and around other parts of the country, but at the moment our strategy is to build our Birmingham portfolio and London portfolios only. So that's what I was looking for. Any properties in there that would fit that, and also any properties where I could see that the current rent that they were getting, we could maybe, so for example, within there's a house, I believe, a 4-bedroom house somewhere I noticed.
Yeah, it's the down, yeah.
And you can obviously increase the rent by converting that, if possible, into a HMO. Those were my main 2 things I looked. And the third thing, I looked at what the rates were on the interest rates in terms of the mortgages. If they were low and they were long term, brilliant. We're going to get cash flow going forward for many years.
Okay, so guys, you start seeing the way that Hanif started to think about these properties. Do you understand the reason why we're doing this? But more importantly, it could be an option that you source this kind of stuff, and you don't necessarily have to keep it yourself. You could sell this on for a sourcing fee, so you then become a sourcer as well. So there's lots of different avenues. It's all about having the tools in the toolbox to enable you to go out and become a more rounded property professional. Now, if you look at the stuff that both Hanif and I both do, we've both got letting agencies, we've both got estate agencies, we've both got large property portfolios, we've also got portfolios which we own with none of our own money, so for argument's sake, rent-to-rent portfolios, lease option portfolios, and we've also got other business interests outside property. But we've also got deal sourcing companies. We've also got below market value trading companies. So between us, we've got a lot of experience, and we've become a rounded property professional. So we're not just there looking for 25% below market value, because properties like that, you could put out 10,000 leaflets, not get a single lead. Whereas here, what I'm trying to teach you is how to become almost like a lead magnet. Every property that comes to you, can you come up with a solution? And with people like myself and Hanif in your corner, of course you can, because you've got to have creative people, you've got to have positive people in your corner. And we'll be talking about how you can do that in a short while. Okay. So I got approached by another investor this week. So that was the first portfolio of 6 properties. Got approached by another investor who's got a large, who'd like to dispose of a large cash flowing portfolio of 30 properties, which are in negative equity. Now you'll ask the question: what's the benefit? Why would they do that? Because if it's always cash flowing, what's the issue? Why wouldn't they just generate or benefit from the cash flow? Now, cash flow doesn't always seem to be the biggest be all and end all. You've got to think of this thing called convenience. Now, the person who owns this portfolio have decided that the time that is taken to manage these 30 properties in this location, which is up north, if they allocated that time better spent to where they are in the south, they could actually make a lot more money. So not everything comes down to money. It comes down to convenience and time management as well. So that's something that you, as a property investor, you can trade your time for their convenience. Now, as a result of trading your time for their convenience, there's got to be a monetary value in exchange for your time. Because if you were to go off and work for someone, you're going to get an hourly rate. That's exchange of time for your there's a monetary value for your time there. And it's exactly the same with property. You've got to determine, is that monetary value worth the time that you're putting into it? For the London investor, no, it's not. But for someone more local to it, of course it would be. So there's lots of things that you've got to take into consideration there. Now, the immediate benefits of doing a lease option, I'm hitting home on these points. And you notice that it's a common theme throughout the presentation. You get to take control immediately. We're not having to mess about with mortgage companies or anything like that. It costs nothing to do so. You get to add value if and where possible, and we're going to be talking about title splits in a second. You get to generate cash flow from a property which has cost you nothing. And then hopefully you can utilize that cash flow to grow other property portfolios which you may own, or business interests like Hanif and I have done so. So Hanif may have used some of the cash flow from some of this portfolio to then go off and start becoming innovative with new products, generating new products to put into companies like B&Q, etc. So we've talked about these. When is it really effective to use this? Again, we're talking about the non-mortgageable properties. We're talking about properties that may have a short lease. So we're looking at flats that may have a short lease, and you can use that time to extend the lease over a longer period, which would increase the value. Fixer-uppers, so properties that may be in need of a bit of TLC. Slice and dice, title splits, which we're going to talk about in a sec, and a portfolio split, which we'll talk about shortly. So here's one property. Now, as a house, its market value is probably on average £200,000. But how about if you use the same house and converted it into 2 one-bedroom flats? What would that do to the gross development value? Now, let's just say that you use the same house and you convert it into 2 flats, one on the ground floor, one on the first floor, and each house is now worth each flat is now worth 150,000, which means that you've now created a product which is worth 300,000 combined. Now, after taking into consideration the £200,000 that you may have created the option on with the owner, you may have done a bit of work, you've increased the value by 100 grand. Do you see how this is working so far? The rule is, and I'm going to pass you back on to Hanif here, is that we've got quite a few questions. So what I want to do is I'm going to pass you on to Hanif here, and then we're going to go through some of the questions. I'm going to show you a little bit about what you can do next. What's your next step? So Hanif, what's the 3 rules when it comes to lease options?
Just before you do that, on that deal that you just talked about there, if you just go back one slide.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole deal, you can do that no money down, because you get an option with the owner, the vendor, to buy the property for 200,000. So you put no money in to do that. You then do a deal with the builder who's fixing up the property to convert them into 2 flats. So let's say it costs £30,000 to do the work, to convert them into 2 flats. You say to him, I'll pay you 35,000 or 40,000, but I'm not going to pay you until I've sold the properties. He then, has a contract with you to receive 40,000. He goes, yeah, that's fine. I'm getting 10 grand more than I would have got. When you sell those properties for 300,000, you pay him his 40, you pay the other guy those 200,000, you end up with 60,000, and you haven't put any money into it. So, so that's the advantage, and that's how you set up these deals on a no money down basis. And just like you can do that with the builder, you can do that same thing with the architect, and we do, and you can do the same thing with the solicitors, and we do that as well. So we pay them after the sale of the property. We pay them more than they would have got if we paid them up front. But so what? Who cares? We've made a great amount of money, and we've not had to put any money in to do that deal. Okay, if you go forward, I'll go through the
but
other.
guys, do you see? I never really thought about it like that. I'm going to be completely honest. I think that's really powerful. What you've just said is that has anyone ever done that with their builders? They've paid them as a profit percentage of the job. More importantly, talking about obviously time and convenience. You're exchanging their time for monetary value. So
we do that, and we do generally we always do it with our architects. We always do it with our builders, because then they're in it with you. You're not chasing them to say, have you finished the build this week? Have you got the electrician round? He's not sent him off somewhere else, because he knows he isn't getting paid until he's done that work. And it makes the whole management of the development so much easier on your end. You're not concerned so much about him, because he's going to make sure he does a good job, because he knows he's not going to get sold quickly if he doesn't. So everything becomes simpler in terms of how you do the whole deal, how you set everything up.
So, guys, there you go. That's a great little nugget. That's an absolute great nugget. So, potentially, your builder becomes your JV partner. Potentially, your architect becomes your JV partner. Potentially, your solicitor becomes your JV partner. And they're incentivized to do the deal because they only get paid on the back end and the success of the project. So, something to take into consideration there, guys. So, what's the 3 rules, Hanif?
Okay, rule number 1: where's the pain? What does the vendor, what does the person selling really want? What are they looking for?
Okay. So rule number 2.
Where's the motivation? What is it that you can give them that will make this deal work? What is it that will work ultimately in terms of making this deal become a win-win situation for everyone?
Okay, and we've just crossed off rule number 3 in the same question. Now we've got a lot of questions,
which is basically okay.
Okay, so we've got a lot of questions. So what we're going to do, we're going to quickly now, Hanif. People say that things like this don't happen in London. Why would people give us things like this in London? Now, can you just quickly clarify for the guys that are online that are in London that can this work there?
Yeah, this can work anywhere and everywhere. It works. We've done lease options all over the country. I've either negotiated them myself, or I've negotiated them on behalf of other mentees or people that were on our training courses in the past, and they've been in London, they've been in Scotland, they've been in Ireland, they've been everywhere. They've even been in other countries. So yeah, you can do this anywhere, everywhere, all the time. It's not at all difficult, or not. It's not possible in London. Of course, it's possible in London. It's possible anywhere.
Okay, so now one thing just to quickly bear in mind is that if anywhere, London's probably possibly one of the easier places to do it. Would you agree? Because some of the properties are quite large in London, so there's more scope to add value there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I definitely agree that in London it's easier to do a lot of lease options. So, for example, let's say you're buying a property from someone, but they're moving. They're scaling down. So they've had a house and they now are older. They want to retire and they want to move into a retirement home, so a retirement apartment. They normally want a specific date that sale must be going through, because they're going to be moving into that retirement apartment. So they might say, we want to know that our house is sold and we want to move on November the 27th. Well, most people buying their house want to move in next week or in a month's time as soon as they've sold their own. So then they can't find people who are going to say, yeah, we agree to buy this house for completion on November the 27th. So they'll end up selling you their house at a slight discount, and you can have an option to agree to buy that house for November the 27th, even though it's today. That gives you 6 months, 7 months. And in those 6, 7 months, if you've been in London recently, you'll have noticed that the house prices have gone up on another spike and they're rising really fast. Well, when it comes to November and it comes to you actually wanting to sell it, or in 2 months when you put that property on the market, it might have gone up 10,000 or 15,000 or more. And therefore you can make money from an option agreement like that very, very easily. But that's just one thing. Doing the simplest thing that we've done in London are the lease extensions. Because in London, if you've got an apartment and let's say the lease has dropped down to say 45 years or something, it might cost 150,000, 200,000 pounds to extend that lease, while the current owner hasn't got 200,000 to extend that lease. So that's when you set up these option agreements over the property. So that allows you to take control of that property, get the lease extension without having to pay for it, sell the property on, and the new person who buys it pays for the lease extension through you and pays the old vendor off for their flat, and you end up with the difference between that. And that's probably the best way of using them in London at the moment, because people just haven't got the 150 grand to get those lease extensions otherwise. And there's a lot more of those deals there than somewhere up north where the lease extension might only be 20,000 or 30,000.
So there you have it, guys. Um, so there you have it. So there's a key tip as to how this can work extremely well in London, in the capital. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about something that both Hanif and I have come up with. We've been approached quite a lot recently by people asking how can they learn this strategy? Where would they get all the contracts? Now I've got quite a few people online tonight saying, where can we get your contracts? Where can we get your contracts? Where can we get your contracts? Now, in actual fact, the only way that you can get our contracts or by using our power team is by, in actual fact, turning up to one of our workshops that we're running. It is on the 19th and 20th of March, which means that it's in 2 weeks' time. And what we'll be doing, we'll be talking over the weekend. Here's just a few of the things that we'll be talking about: the legals, how to use the right contracts. Now, one person called Lee, that's online, is saying that, guys, we're all screaming down the internet. I don't think those deals are hard to find, but it's a paperwork that we need to be safe. Is there anyone out there? Okay, well, guys, just so that you know, anyone that attends, we don't sell our paperwork just to anyone and anywhere. We only offer our paperwork to guys that attend the workshop. So we'll be showing you the legals, and there's lots of different things that you need to know about the legals to make sure that you're legally committed, you're legally protected. But more importantly, we'll be putting you in contact with our power team who do this for us day in, day out. We'll be showing you how to find the motivated vendors. But more importantly, it's great finding the vendors, but if you don't know what to say to them or how to position your proposition, you're not going to be able to bring back the property. Now, if both you and I were in front of the vendor, I can pretty much guarantee, or if you and Hanif were in front of the vendor, I can pretty much guarantee that Hanif would bring back the property every time. He's been doing this for a number of years, so he's pretty much got a script: what to say it, how to propose it to the vendor, and how to create it as a win-win scenario. More importantly, this can actually work with estate agents up and down the country, and how to have them take you seriously, calling you with deals. And it also works, again, great with commercial agents who have got commercial properties. And when we're talking about commercial properties, we're also talking about development plots as well, and how to make big money. Because once you've got commercial agents on board, they've got an abundance of deals. And because they're slightly more commercially minded than an estate agent, they'll be able to give you a lot more deals than an estate agent would. And more importantly, now that you've got the deals coming in, now that you've got the contracts in place, how to create it so that it's no money down legally. So like I said, we'll be showing you how we've done real deals examples. We'll be giving you examples of our marketing, the negotiating, and the deal structuring that we've done. And you actually get our templates for marketing, scripts for estate agents, scripts for letting agents, and yes, they are different. Templates to secure the deals, templates of legal documents, and we'll be giving you multiple real-life examples of different types of deals. So there'll be stuff for residential, there'll be stuff for development deals, there'll be stuff for commercial deals. And we'll be showing you the simple, easy negotiation strategy so that even the most shyest and the most introverted person can negotiate thousands off a property. Now, just so that we know that you've got it, we'll be doing a negotiation role play. It's one thing to write it all down. It's another thing to actually portray it so that all parties get it. Finally, and this is a big part of it, we'll be doing a deal workshop. So you could come along with a deal. We will strip it back to its bare basics. And we'll go through the deal every step of the way, showing you how to structure it and how to create the win-win solution. Now, again, it's on the 19th and 20th of March 2015, and I know what I've done here, Hanif. Crap. 19th, 20th of March. It's at the Village Hotel in Dudley. It'll either be in Dudley or Walsall. Now, the cost of the workshop normally is best part of £2,000, but for tonight we're doing it for £995. There is no apology for that. It is £995, but what we are going to do, we're going to allow you to bring a business partner for free. Now, we've only got 10 spaces available. So that's 10 spaces, and if you bring your partner for free, that means that we're only having 20 people in the room, because for stuff like this, we can't do it on mass basis. We need to make sure that you've got the technique and the skill and the ability mastered to a T. So we're only after 10 people, 10 payers who are going to bring a business partner with them for free. So that's £995. I appreciate I've put £500 there, which means that when you split £995 between two of you, it's just less than £500. And that's where you can purchase it, just by copying that link into your web browser. And that will take you to a page where you can order it. Now, whilst you're doing that, I'm going to quickly go through some of the questions. So Lee's asked, can we get the legal paperwork? Unfortunately, Lee, the only way that you can do that is by attending our workshop. The one thing that I will do, Lee, and the one thing that I have forgot to mention is that if you can't attend in person, we can live stream the event directly from the workshop. So that as you're watching this tonight, instead of just staring at a screen, you'll be watching both Hanif and I present on the day. And we'll be recording it, which means that we'll be giving you the audio clip, and I'll be sending that to you directly after the event. You get all the presentations, you get all the workshops, and everything to do, all the documentation prior via email. And it's something that I do for some of my other workshops as well, and it works really well. So for argument's sake, if you're based up in Scotland and you can't get down to Dudley, or you can't get down to the West Midlands, it works really well. So just going through some of the questions, I'm just trying to make sure that we haven't covered off a lot of the content. So Natalie's asked a good question. She goes, a lot of the properties, namely houses, want you to live in the property rather than rent it out. Is there a way around this? Now, Hanif, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, could you just clarify the question for me? I'm not sure I understood what she.
So she's asked, a lot of the properties, namely houses, want you to live in the property rather than rent it out. Is there a way around this? I've never really come across it.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I've never really come across it where they want me to live in it personally as opposed to rent it out and use it as an investment property.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't either. Pretty much, they don't really care what you're doing so long as you're paying them the monthly, amount, or you're paying the mortgage if you're doing it on a long-term lease option. I've never had, I've negotiated hundreds of lease options. I've never had anyone ever, you have to live in this house. I'm a bit confused at what her question is. Maybe she's trying to ask something else.
I don't know. Well,
just come out in the typing a bit there.
Okay, so Natalie, if that's not what you've asked, by all means, please feel free to get back in contact. Now, Jay has asked a good question. He goes, when do you pay the stamp? If a property is applicable for stamp duty, when do you pay it? Do you pay it on exchange or do you pay it on completion?
Okay, that's a good question. Um, it really depends on how you do the legals underneath this. So we've shown you the principles, the idea of a lease option. Now, the way you implement that idea can be in multiple ways. So, for example, you can have an option on the property where um, you you don't have the right to complete, or you have the right to complete any time in the next 20 years, for example. Well, in that case, you don't pay the stamp duty. However, if you exchange, you can also implement it by having an exchange with a delayed completion. So you actually exchange contracts. If you do, if you exchange contracts, then you are liable to pay stamp duty. Um, there are other ways as well that you can implement the same thing. So you have to decide what is it, and we'll go through lots of different scenarios. What is it that you're trying to create from this deal? How you're trying to structure it, and based on that, your solicitor will create. And again, we show you how this is done. Your solicitor will then create the best way of implementing that, so that you minimize your taxes and you minimize your stamp duty and everything else that you need to do. But obviously, you don't pay your stamp duty until you buy a house, and that's the main beauty of options. You're not buying the house; you're just having a right to buy the house. So until you buy the house, you don't pay your stamps.
Okay, thanks for that. Stephen's asked a question. Goes, what if the vendor needs cash up front?
Okay. Um, Sometimes they do, and it's possible that they do. There's a number of solutions around that. So, for example, one scenario we've done, the vendor didn't have any mortgage really on a property. It was a very small amount, and they wanted some money up front. So what we told them to do was go back to their mortgage company and extend their mortgage, so increase the current mortgage that they had. So they were able to borrow an extra 30,000, 40,000 pounds on that property. They used that, they went off on it. We carried on paying the mortgage plus that extra 30,000, 40,000. So that's the way you get them to get money up front. So if he says, no, I need 50 grand because I need to put it in there, if there's equity in the property, tell them to increase their mortgage and you'll pay that mortgage going forward. A great way to get the deposit from them, or for whatever they need going forward. It's a really simple, easy way to do this.
Okay, fantastic. It's great advice. Okay, so quickly, right. So Sue's asked a very broad question. How do you find options?
Okay, how do you find them? I mean,
Well,
we could be here all
we
night
should put, I
talking
think
about
we
all
should
the
put the
different ways.
question back to Sue. Where do you not find them? Because remember, it all
Yeah,
comes down to
absolutely. I mean, I'll give you a couple of really simple ways to go out and get options if you really want them. Okay, one is obviously leaflets, but let's stick to something really simple that you could do tomorrow morning if you really wanted to do. Tomorrow morning, if you really want a lease option, go to 5 estate agents and say the following to them. Say to them, hello, John, Sarah, whatever their name is. Have you got any properties on your books which you're not able to sell because the vendor is asking too much because his mortgage is more than the property is worth? So, are there any negative equity properties? They will all have some. So they'll say, look, I've got this house, I've got to sell it for 120,000 because that's how much the guy owes, but it's only worth 110. Say to that, so they'll give you a selection of those properties. First, they'll look at you a bit mad and say, bear with me. Look, I'm looking for some of these, and I'll show you how I can sell them for you, or how I can buy them rather. Say that to them. They'll show you those properties. Have a look if any of those properties cash flow. So if you think you can rent them out and cover them any mortgage, or you can do them as a HMO, then go and speak to the vendor, agree a lease option on those properties. The estate agent will be open once you've done one with them. They'll start ringing you up and sending you more of them and more of them, because these are properties that they're just sitting on their books and they can't sell. It's a great, easy way to go out and get lease options. And if you went to 5 estate agents and you did it properly and you actually built some rapport with them first, again, we show you how you build a rapport, what the actual script is. You will find at least one option deal out of that. It's not possible not to. There's just so many of those kind of deals about.
Okay, great. Um, so Stephen's asked a great question. Goes, is there a way of sourcing lease extension deals in volume?
Sorry, can you repeat that again? I think I lost you for a second.
Is there a way of sourcing lease extension deals in volume?
Yeah, yes, there is. I'm not sure I want to tell you, but I'll tell you. Okay, I mean, basically, apartment blocks tend to have been built at the same sort of time. So let's say an apartment block was built in 1900. You will know that 10 apartment blocks are all built in 1900s. They would all have been given a 99-year lease at that time. So all of the flats in that block of maybe 100 will be coming up towards the end of their lease. So if they're all coming up to the end of their lease at that time, they're all possible lease extension deals that you could do. Now, half of them may have extended the lease over the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, but there will be some in there that have not extended their lease. And you'll end up, if you write to all of them and say you're looking to buy their flat, you like that area, you're looking to buy an apartment in that block, they'll come back to you and say, yeah, we're looking to sell, but we've only got a short-term lease. And then you say, well, I don't mind, I'll still buy it anyway, and I'll give you a little bit more than it's worth. And all of a sudden, you'll get deals out of that. So we've done that in the past where we've written to everybody in the block because we know that block has now gone under 60 years left on the lease, and people can't get mortgages to buy those properties. So that's a simple way to get lease extensions.
Okay, perfect. So that's a great answer, and that's quite a detailed answer as well. So thanks for that. Okay, so I'm just going to look at a couple of more. So one person said that where do you purchase? So basically, you follow that link there, and it should take you to a page. Let's have a quick look. See if I've. Let's have a quick look just to make sure that I've got it. And it should take you to a page that pretty much, if I just copy that in. And so all it does, takes you onto a page there, and then all you do, press the orange box at the bottom, and that will take you through to the page where you can make payment. That hopefully we'll look forward to seeing you there. So going forward then, I'm just going to have a quick look, see if there's one or two other important questions that we've got here. Okay, so Joanna's put, hi Arsh and Hanif, can we use this strategy to purchase the properties in the UK if we are foreign investors?
Yes, you can. I mean, again, because you're not getting a mortgage, it doesn't really make a difference. You're not worried about the normal mortgage criteria. Are you foreign? Do you have the right to remain in the country? Do you have deposits? All of those things become irrelevant. It's down to you understanding how to do the deals, and that's about all that you need to do. Understand.
Okay, so one question that someone's just asked is that the Law Society in Scotland stopped lawyers using lease options, obviously in Scotland. So is there a way around it in Scotland?
I don't know the exact rules in Scotland, but I know people who are doing lease option types. They may not call them lease options. Like I said, there was many ways you can implement them underneath. So, for example, having an exchange with a delayed completion is just one of the ways that people implement lease options. So perhaps that's what they're doing in Scotland. Although I can't see them make. I can't see how they would make lease options as a whole illegal in Scotland, because an option cannot be illegal. I can have the right to buy something of you, and you and I can agree that it doesn't have to be a house. It could be a car. It could be shares on the stock exchange. And every day, the trillions of pounds in options are done for shares on the stock exchange.
Okay.
So
Okay, I'm just trying to just quickly go through it. I think we've pretty much one question which has come up actually. Do you need the lender's consent?
Okay, good question. It depends on the lender. Some lenders will require it. So if it's a rental property anyway, then yes, they're already renting it out. The real problem becomes if you've got a vendor's house that they used to live in, and then you want to rent that property out. Generally, you need to get permission to be able to rent that property out. So you get something called consent to let. But again, we'll show you how you get consent to let, how you approach the lender so that they allow you to get that consent to let. Um, and generally, most mortgage companies will give you consent to let. I've never come across one which said blatantly no, to be honest.
Okay.
They'll try and charge you a little bit more in interest, but basically they give it to you.
Okay, so guys, there you have it. So we've given you a fair bit of knowledge there. You know, with all due respect, we can only cover a certain amount within an hour, but give us 2 days and we'll teach you everything that you need to know. The rest is now up to you. Now, at the start of the webinar, you told us a little bit about your why you're doing it, the reason why you want to do it. A lot of you are doing it for your families, a lot of you are doing to reach a single financial freedom. We can help you do that. But in order for us to do that, we need to spend a weekend with you. The next weekend that we have available is on the 19th and the 20th of March. It is in the West Midlands, and you can live stream the event. And again, you'll get the recording of the event, which will all be emailed after the event. So if you can make that weekend, by all means, click on the link that we're just showing on the screen now. Get yourself booked on. We are only after 10 people. It's a small event. It's not one of these rent to rent type deals where we can train 100 people at the same time. In order for you to make sure that you've got it, we need to make sure that it is a small group and that we've got lots of intimate interaction there. So if you think it's for you, now's your time, because once it's full, it's full. And unfortunately, this is a one-off event that I'm running with Hanif because Hanif's consistently in and out the country. So I've managed to time down for one weekend and one weekend only. So if you like the thought of everything that we've told you tonight, the 19th and 20th of March is pretty much a game changer and almost like a life changer strategy. If you have got any further questions, by all means, you can come through to me. You've got my mobile number there. Give me a call. Let's have a chat. Let's see what we can do. And let's see how we can move it forward. Grish has asked, actually, here's a great question. It says, what support will there be after the event, please, Arsh? Now, in actual fact, what would you do? Hanif, would you be happy to support all the guys that come on the event with deals going forward? So would you be even potentially happy to JV with some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we love doing this sort of thing, and one of the reasons why I teach, because it's the ability to then find great people who you've trained and they're doing them right, to then JV with them on more complex and interesting deals going forward. So, we're always looking for new JV partners,
Here's
and if
what
we've
we'll do,
trained them,
Hanif.
we know that they're doing stuff right.
Let's throw this caveat into it right now, and I've only just thought of this. Anyone who comes on the workshop, every deal that you get, we will help you structure it. And providing that we
Yeah,
structure it,
absolutely.
and
Why not?
providing that we do something with it, there's even potential to JV with us as well. So not only that, you won't be by yourself. We'll even teach you methods. We'll be talking about the marketing methods, but then once you've gone out and you're in the field, we're happy to JV with you. So and you can pick up the phone to both Hanif and I, and let's turn this into something more of a long-term solution as opposed to a weekend. So here's our offer to you. If you come on the weekend, every deal that you bring in, we'll appraise it and we'll make sure that it works. We'll make sure that you've got everything in place so that you're going to be making money at the back end of it. So that's what we're going to be offering you guys. I'm hoping that that is enough information that's going to give you now to get out and book on, because once we've got our 10 people, that's it. We don't want large numbers on this. If you've got any questions, you can call me either this evening or tomorrow morning, and let's see what we can do. We've still got a lot of people online, so what I'm going to suggest is that if there are any other questions, come through to me on my mobile, and let's see what we can do. Again, you can connect with me on stuff like the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, or as my father-in-law calls it, Twatter. And then let's go from there. But Hanif, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. I know that you're a busy guy. Thank you very much. You've been online for the best part of 90 minutes. I'd like to thank everyone online that's been on tonight. We've had quite a lot of people on there. There's been some great questions. Hopefully, you've learned a lot. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you on the 19th and 20th of March. Um, I wish you all the very best, and hopefully we see you soon. Thank you very much. Take care. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Bye bye.